side, Pinoy Dragon, triple AKGF, and J-Moto. And then on the bottom side, UNC, Chapel Hill, Eugenius, Mang, and Paradox, making up that three-man squad.
You know what I'd love to see is I'd love to see these guys in uniforms.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
great.
Cool. Yeah.
I think it'd be awesome to see.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. I mean, the three guys are having to figure out the best way to play this game. And I can tell you, at times, having practiced in big groups of players, we practice oftentimes similar this way, where we have multiple people working on one side. It gives you a lot of different great perspectives. But that doesn't necessarily make it easier. A lot of times it makes it harder. Like, imagine playing Grim Patron where all three people have different opinions.
You're not going to have a fun time with
that
one.
I mean, imagine 3 life coaches trying to play Patron Warrior.
You'd be talking about turn 1 on turn 4 still.
Which I don't really have a problem with, but when you get to that critical turn where you don't have that much time, you have to get going really early on. That experience is something you got to rely on. And take a look at these opening hands. UNC, they have a lot of different options for ramp, but nothing to ramp into. UTA kind of has the opposite problem where they don't have much ramp, but they have a lot of different things to ramp into. These are very interesting hands to see.
Yeah, it's interesting that they went for the Innervate Shade to get the pressure out right away instead of maybe going for something like a Coin Innervate Emperor Thorsan on turn 3 in order to sort of act as a ramp tool because you're getting to your Emperor Thorsan quicker, reducing the rest of your cards in your hand. But they decide to get that early pressure out to maybe punish UNC for getting greedy with their ramp.
And punish is really, I think, the perfect word for this. Turn 1 Shade, I think that this is probably one of the best turns in the game that you can have. I imagine your win rate goes through the roof when you have turn 1 Shades. But something else they're thinking about is because they got that Wrath in hand, maybe considering how it affects against cards like Darnassus Aspirant. If you go turn 1 Shade and turn 2 Wrath that guy, you're looking like you're in phenomenal shape. And wow, if you're going to pick up a second Innervate after you Innervate turn 1 Shade, why wouldn't you Innervate it out on turn 1, TJ?
Oh, yeah. They knew it was coming. But now...
Just do it.
Yeah.
They did all of the math.
Went through all the odds and said, definitely turn 1 Shade. Yeah. But yeah, they're still going to have to wait one more turn before they're able to get out the Emperor Thorsan, but having to wait one more turn, having to wait until turn 3 to get out Emperor Thorsan, that's a first world problem for Hearthstone players.
I don't really know if I've ever had to wait that long in my entire life. I mean, it's just, usually I have turn 1 Emperor.
Yeah.
And just drop the phone and fall out of your chair. But UNC really with a difficult decision now in front of them. Players do not like floating mana, and I can tell you that these 3 guys are really talking about the implications of floating that mana right now. If they play this Lotheb on turn 4, that denies UTA this Emperor Thorsan, which is a major deal right now. Not only that, but it gives them a 5/5 body out at the moment, and if they pick up another 5-drop right after that, or even just a piloted Shredder afterwards, you're looking at a fantastic turn. And with the way their hand's constructed, I don't really know if not playing the Lotheb is a risk that you can take right now. They may be thinking otherwise, looking at this Innervate and going, if we pick up Savage Roar, suddenly we can accelerate out this combo. But I think they've figured it out that this Lotheb is really going to give them the best chances to win right now. It's uncontested, and it possibly even denies plays. I think this is a great play for UNC.
Yeah, the big thing here is that they have to be knowing that UTA still has the coin. And there's really not many 3-drops for Druids. They have to think, well, if we punish them with the Lotheb, they're probably trying to curve into a coin piloted Shredder, which, I mean, a coin Innervate Emperor Thorsan is very close to that, but they are very fortunate to pick up that second Shade when they did.
Yeah, and so now UNC, they're going to get in 5 damage with this, but they also pick up another Innervate, and this is something that we talk about with Druids sometimes too, is what happens when you draw too much ramp. And they're sort of a victim of that right now. They've drawn a lot of utility early on, which really affected them. But something else that happened is when they picked up this Innervate right afterwards, their hand is dry as a bone right now. And they're even looking at this swipe to face right now, showing you the kind of desperation they feel with their hand right now.
Yeah, well, you have to recognize your win conditions. And when you see your opponent have double Shade on the board and you have no creatures in your hand, then you have to sort of say, well, maybe I just need to put on as much pressure as possible. Hope to draw into combo quick enough before I lose massive control over the board. And, I mean, this is just sort of a disaster because even though UNC does have a way to deal with this Emperor Thorsan, these Shades are going to do some work.
Yeah, they even decided to trade in the 5/5 Shade.
Okay.
Which I am a little bit surprised by. I feel like they're super far ahead of the board, but something that has to be considered is the threat of this Emperor Thorsan continuing to happen turn after turn. UNC has got to be afraid of that. And look at the decision they have now. They just picked up Ancient Allure. They have a way to take out this Emperor Thorsan, but then they don't get a 5/5. They don't get 2 extra cards. I mean, look at the decision you got in front of yourself now. This is only 2 different decisions, but they mean very different things, and that's the difficult part to figure out.
And then also, the other decision is, which method do we use to remove the Emperor Thorsan? Do we Hero Power swipe, Wrath for 1 and swipe, just use Force of Nature to clear it off? There's a lot of different decisions that are going into this, and I think they settled on the right one. They realized that they don't have too much creature value in their hand, so Force of Nature is going to have a lot of value to try and clean up the board and gain back board position. The Wrath, using it for 1 now when you know you're going to draw cards next turn, you might need that for spot removal since you're already behind. I like the play that they went with.
Yeah, and you got the Innervate in your hand too, so maybe this even hits a Piloted Shredder afterwards, which is kind of the play they were looking at, maybe denying since UTA had the coin. And so in a spot like this, the other thing that's happened too is because they're at such a high life total, paying those few points of life really not that big of a deal right now. You know, it's not often in card games that you get to use your life as a resource, but when you can, it's often one of the most important facets that you can have there.
Whoa.
But now look at the desperation from UTA side. You know, we just talked about how how UNC didn't have much minion value. Look at UTA side of the board. They don't have much minion value either. They're actually using a Keeper of the Grove just to get bodies on the board.
Keeper of the Grove to face and a Wrath for 1 on your own Shade. That game took a turn for UTA right there. They went from having the dream to not having the dream.
This is Hearthstone at its finest.
Yeah.
When you're having to watch players grasp for every little possible advantage they can get. And now with UTA picking up this other Force Nature, you know, maybe they're going to feel comfortable using these as a removal or later on. But for now, that Ancient Lore is going to be there. And since they traded off their last Shade into a 5/5, I assume they're doing the same thing right here. Yep, they want to protect that 5/5. And look at what's rotated back into this deck, Sylvanas. That's a card that became extinct from a lot of these matchups. And UNC, a lot of power back behind their hand. We got ourselves in a good old-fashioned minion fight here. These guys are going to have to brawl it out for position.
Yeah. Yeah, Sylvanas sort of disappeared. I think Savage Combatant had a lot to do with it, because even though Savage Combatant's 4 mana, a lot of players consider it like a 6-slot card because you want to utilize the Inspire effect right away. So players a lot of times were cutting cards like Sylvanas to make room for Savage Combatant. They had to choose between whether or not they wanted to keep Sylvanas or Emperor in the deck, and Emperor just allows you to do a little bit more unfair things than Sylvanas does a lot of the time. So,
yeah, I think a big consideration around that too had to be with Savage Combatant's flexibility that it offered you. You know, with Sylvanas or with Emperor, it's a 6-mana card no matter what.
Yeah.
But sometimes Savage Combatant can come out turn 1 even, and if that card gets come out turn 1, you suddenly contest almost every single minion you're going to face. That's a much bigger difference in a card that is solidified and must be 6 mana. They're going to go Ancient of War here, but UTA, you know, that Keeper of the Grove, I think that they played, I think it influenced this 5/10 a lot, but they have that second Keeper of the Grove. They're going to be able to punish this.
Yeah, they realize, well, his hand wasn't that good. He's probably holding on to combo pieces, and he's already used 1 Keeper, so playing the Ancient of War definitely feels like sort of the safer play in that scenario, but I mean, UTA has picked up some pretty scary cards. They have Keeper. They do pick up a Savage Roar as well, so they can actually full combo as early as next turn with the reduced first Force of Nature in their hand.
Not only that, but they still have the option to play Sylvanas. The only problem here with the Sylvanas is if it gets Keeper of the Grove, suddenly you're looking at this Ancient of War getting full value, and that's a nightmare scenario, I think, for UTA. So once again, only 2 different kinds of decisions to make here, but they mean very different things. And this is the tough part to figure out, is not what does this turn look like, what does turn 8, turn 9, and turn 10 look like as well. And those are, I mean, that situation is very difficult to evaluate. So not surprised to see them take the full amount of time here. This is, you know, maybe Keeper of the Grove is just not, it's not that easy.
Running out of time here. They got to make this decision. This is where sort of that team play is coming into effect.
Yeah, I like silencing this because it allows you this damage push, and I think the damage push is what you want right now, given that you have the turn 8 combo in your hand.
Yeah, and UNC has to be super scared because UTA just Keepered and then Hero Powered and floated 2 mana on turn 7 with 5 cards in hand. So you have to be thinking they have probably multiple pieces of combo.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't think UNC can actually play around Force Nature Savage Roar at this point.
Yeah.
And so this is looking like UTA's game, but they're going to still fight as hard as they can to try to figure out this board position. And I think with Sylvanas in their hand, that's probably what they're going to be looking at. Because again, just not a very effective way to defend against combo. I mean, you can use Force Nature and you can Wrath afterwards, but look what that leaves your board as.
Yeah.
It's just stone dry at that point, and your opponent's getting initiative. So it's fine to clear. If you have to clear, you have to clear. But you know, you take a look at a situation like this, if you just keep removing your opponent's minion turn after turn, What ends up happening is you get the same turn again like this, except you don't have removal. All you have is minions left to fight back with. You find yourself in the same scenario. You're still dead to combo. I think this is the turn they got to take a risk.
Yep. And he's at 14 health, so even if he does clear the board, like you said, he's just dead to combo
he's got to
regardless.
clear, and he's got a hero power.
Yeah.
And so I like the Emperor Thaurissan. I think this is the best play they had, but UTA, they had their Emperor Thaurissan first. They got Force Nature Savage Roar, and they're taking a 2-1 lead. And look at those smiles on their face. They know what this means for them.
Yeah, as soon as they used that Keeper on the Ancient of War last turn and realized there's no way they're coming back in this one, he's at 14. We got reduced combo. You could see the smiles were already starting to come on their face, but gave a little bit of a cheer there at the end, and UNC looks a little bit destroyed after that one.
Well, they kind of did, but you can see their middle player just kind of shrugged it off. Went, well, I mean, this is what we concluded, is that if they had this, we weren't going to win anyway, so we made the best plays that we could.
Yeah.